Why do the people we trust most end up holding the sharpest knives? My name is Sarah, and I was 32 when my world, the one I had so carefully built, began to crumble. Before all this, I was a woman who truly believed in the power of family, in the unbreakable bonds of sisterhood. My life revolved around simple joys, my loving husband, Mark, our cozy little home filled with sunlight and the scent of freshly baked cookies, and the anticipation of becoming a mother. I worked as a kindergarten teacher, a job I adored because it allowed me to nurture little minds and hearts, something I always dreamed of doing for my own child. I was the kind of person who meticulously planned everything, from my weekly grocery lists to our 5-year financial goals. My friends often joked that I had an app for everything, but beneath that organized exterior was a hopeful, slightly anxious heart, longing for the one thing that still eluded us, a baby. Mark and I had been trying for what felt like an eternity. 3 agonizing years, filled with monthly hopes that were always dashed. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a punch to the gut, leaving a hollow ache that no amount of Mark's comforting hugs could truly fill. Our journey had been a silent struggle, one we mostly kept to ourselves, only occasionally hinting at our heartache to close family. My sister, Emily, was perhaps the only one who truly understood the depth of my longing. She was my younger sister, only 28, but in many ways, she'd always been my rock, my confidant. We shared everything, secrets, dreams, even our clothes back in high school. Emily had this infectious laugh and a carefree spirit that balanced my more reserved nature. She was married to David, a good man, and they had 2 beautiful children, 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Noah. Seeing her with her kids, I felt a pang of envy, but it was always overshadowed by a deep love for my nieces and nephews, and a quiet hope that one day I'd have that too. Our family was close-knit. Sunday dinners at Mom and Dad's house were a tradition, filled with laughter, lively discussions, and the chaotic joy of children running around. Emily and I would often sneak off to the kitchen, whispering about our lives, our husbands, our dreams. She was always there for me, offering a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on when the fertility treatments failed, or a distraction when I needed to escape the sadness. She'd tell me, "Don't worry, Sar. It's going to happen for you. You're meant to be a mom." Her words were a balm to my weary soul. Finally, after countless doctor's appointments, endless tests, and one last, emotionally draining round of IVF, we received the news that changed everything. "You're pregnant, Sarah," the doctor announced, her voice filled with warmth. I remember looking at Mark, tears streaming down both our faces, a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming joy. It felt like a miracle. After all the heartache, all the yearning, our dream was finally coming true. The pregnancy itself was a dream. I felt healthy, vibrant, and every kick, every flutter filled me with an indescribable wonder. We decided not to find out the gender, wanting to keep that ultimate surprise for the delivery room. My due date approached, a date circled brightly on our calendar, each passing day bringing us closer to meeting our little one. We had picked out names, decorated the nursery in soft yellows and greens, and read every parenting book we could get our hands on. Emily was ecstatic for us. She threw me the most beautiful baby shower, complete with tiny onesies and handmade decorations. She was always offering to help, bringing over meals, or just sitting with me, listening to my excited ramblings about sleepless nights and first smiles. Her support felt genuine, unwavering. Then came the day. Our beautiful baby arrived, a perfect little bundle weighing 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and the most precious tiny hands. We named him Leo. Holding him for the first time, all the pain, all the waiting, simply melted away. He was ours. Mark and I were completely smitten, lost in the new parent bubble, overwhelmed by love and exhaustion in equal measure. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. A few weeks after Leo's birth, our pediatrician recommended a routine DNA test. It wasn't for anything serious, just a standard screening for certain genetic markers, a common practice for newborns in our hospital's network. It's just a precaution, gives us a baseline, Dr. Evans explained cheerfully. Mark and I agreed, not thinking anything of it. It was just another item on the long checklist of new parent responsibilities. We filled out the forms. A small blood sample was taken from Leo's heel, and then we went back to our blissful, sleep-deprived routine. A week later, the phone rang. It was Dr. Evans, her tone unusually serious. "Sarah, can you and Mark come into the office? We need to discuss Leo's DNA results." A knot of anxiety immediately tightened in my stomach. What could be wrong? Was our baby sick? The central question formed in my mind like a cold dread. What could possibly be so wrong with our perfect baby that it required an urgent, in-person meeting? The drive to Dr. Evans' office felt interminable. Mark gripped my hand, his knuckles white, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a rigid worry. We walked into the sterile waiting room, the silence amplifying the frantic beating of my heart. When Dr. Evans finally called us in, her face was grim. She sat us down, her gaze compassionate but heavy. "Sarah, Mark," she began, "the DNA results for Leo, they're unusual." My breath hitched. "Unusual how, doctor? Is he okay?" Mark interjected, his voice raspy. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Physically, Leo is perfectly healthy. There's no medical concern. However, the genetic markers, they indicate that Mark is not Leo's biological father." The words hit me like a physical blow. The room spun. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "That's impossible," Mark exclaimed, his face contorted in disbelief and anger. There must be a mistake. I felt a wave of nausea. Not Mark. How could that be? We had gone through IVF, a process where every step was meticulously controlled. I was faithful. Mark was faithful. This made no sense. Dr. Evans handed us a printout, a sea of scientific jargon I couldn't comprehend. "We've double-checked. The results are conclusive. Mark is excluded as the biological father." She then added, almost reluctantly, "And there's another anomaly. The maternal DNA markers. They show a closer relationship to Leo than a typical mother-child bond. It suggests a sibling relationship." A sibling relationship. My mind raced, trying to process this impossible information. A sibling, meaning someone else's child. No, that couldn't be right. IVF meant my egg, Mark's sperm, or a donor. But not this. Not a sibling. My head throbbed. I looked at Mark, his eyes wide with hurt and confusion, already pulling away, a chasm opening between us. This was an external obstacle, the undeniable, shocking truth of the DNA test, threatening to shatter our marriage and our understanding of our child. Over the next few days, my internal world became a maelstrom. Self-doubt consumed me. Had I done something wrong? Had there been a mix-up at the fertility clinic? Or, a far more terrifying thought, had Mark been unfaithful? The idea was ludicrous, but the seed of suspicion, once planted, began to sprout. We contacted the fertility clinic, demanding answers. They were initially dismissive, then cooperative, then defensive. They assured us their protocols were foolproof. Yet, the DNA test remained. Mark, bless his heart, believed me when I swore I hadn't cheated. But the doubt lingered in his eyes, a silent question that screamed louder than any accusation. This became my internal challenge, fighting the insidious doubt, the fear that my husband would never fully trust me again, and the unbearable thought that our child was not truly ours in the way we understood. We decided to repeat the DNA test, this time at a different lab, a desperate hope that the first one was flawed. But the results came back identical. Mark was not Leo's father. And the maternal DNA still indicated a sibling relationship, not a direct mother-child one. It was an impossibility that felt like a cruel joke. The stress began to take its toll. Mark and I communicated in clipped sentences, our once warm home now chilled by unspoken accusations and fear. Even Leo's innocent cries felt like a reminder of the chasm growing between us. I cried constantly, holding my baby, looking into his sweet face, and trying to reconcile the boundless love I felt for him with the terrifying knowledge that something was fundamentally wrong. One afternoon, lost in a haze of sleepless nights and despair, an old memory surfaced. Emily, during the IVF process, had mentioned casually, "You know, if you ever needed a donor egg, I'd totally do it for you. Sar, we're sisters. It'd be like having a mini-me." I'd laughed it off then, never seriously considering it because we were using my own eggs, but the memory now twisted into something sinister. Could it be? No, that was insane. Emily would never, but the seed was planted. The sibling relationship from the maternal DNA. Emily was my sister. Could her DNA be confused with mine in some way? Or, an even darker thought emerged, what if it wasn't my egg at all? The all is lost moment came when Mark suggested we might have to consider what this meant for our future. "Sarah," he said one night, his voice hollow, "if Leo isn't biologically mine and something happened at the clinic, what does that mean for us? For him?" His unspoken fear was evident, was our family unit, the one we'd fought so hard for, a lie. I stared at him, tears blurring my vision. My perfect baby, my perfect marriage, my perfect life. It all felt like it was crumbling around me. I felt completely hopeless, adrift in a sea of confusion and betrayal. I knew I needed answers, not just for myself, but for Mark and for Leo. I made an appointment with a genetic counselor, someone who could help me interpret the bewildering reports. She explained that a sibling relationship for the maternal DNA meant that the mother shared half of her genes with the child, but not the specific genetic markers that define a direct parent-child lineage. It was like Leo was the child of someone very closely related to me. A light bulb flickered, cold and horrifying in my mind. Driven by a desperate, sickening suspicion, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed a control. I needed Emily's DNA. This was an external challenge I chose to face head-on. It felt like a betrayal of my sister, but the pain and confusion were greater than any guilt. I went to Emily's house under the guise of helping her clean out some old storage boxes. While she was distracted with the kids, I subtly collected a used hairbrush from her bathroom counter, making sure it had several strands of hair. My hands trembled as I placed it in a plastic bag. I felt like a criminal, but the need for truth was an overwhelming force. I sent the hairbrush, along with a sample of my own DNA and another of Leo's, to a specialized lab requesting a comprehensive sibling and parentage test. The wait for these results was agonizing, each day feeling like a month. I avoided Emily's calls, fabricating excuses, unable to face her knowing what I was doing. Mark, though still hurt, supported my quest for answers, recognizing my determination. We were a united front against the unknown, slowly overcoming the smaller obstacle of communication breakdown. The bigger truth, however, loomed like a storm cloud. When the email arrived, the subject line simply read, "DNA test results." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mark sat beside me, his arm around my shoulder, offering a silent strength. I clicked it open, and the words blurred into an incomprehensible mess for a moment. Then, my eyes focused, scanning for the key information. The results were laid out clearly. First, it confirmed what we already knew. Mark was not Leo's biological father. This was still a gut-wrenching affirmation. Second, and this was the devastating blow, the test confirmed that Emily was Leo's biological mother. And the final sickening twist, the paternal DNA matched David, Emily's husband. Leo was not my son. He was Emily's and David's, my sister, my confidant, my best friend, had carried my baby. And somehow, through some unimaginable deception, Leo had been given to me as my own. The central question from part 1, what could possibly be so wrong with our perfect baby that it required an urgent, in-person meeting, was answered in the most brutal way imaginable. The problem wasn't with Leo, it was with the unthinkable betrayal that had brought him into my life. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. My sister, Emily, the one who had celebrated my pregnancy, thrown my baby shower, sat with me as I dreamed of my future with my child. She had not only betrayed me, but she had stolen my motherhood, replacing it with a cruel, elaborate lie. The IVF clinic had clearly made a catastrophic error, an embryo mix-up, but the cover-up and the continued deception pointed directly to Emily. Mark read the report over my shoulder, his sharp intake of breath the only sound in the room. He snatched the paper, rereading it, his face paling with each line. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be." But it was. The evidence was irrefutable. We confronted Emily the next day. It was a tense, tear-filled, and utterly heartbreaking conversation at her house. David standing stiffly beside her, looking equally shocked and devastated. Emily, cornered by the undeniable proof, finally broke down. Through her sobbing admissions, the story horrifyingly unfolded. During our last IVF cycle, the clinic had indeed made a mistake. They had accidentally implanted Emily's embryo, fertilized with David's sperm, into my uterus. Emily had been undergoing a separate, less intensive fertility treatment at the same clinic, attempting to conceive a third child after struggling for a few months. When the clinic realized their error shortly after my positive pregnancy test, they were terrified of the legal repercussions. They had approached Emily, begging her to keep silent, promising her an unimaginable sum of money and future free IVF cycles if she would just let me carry the baby to term, and then, after a brief period, they would arrange for her to take back her child, claiming it was a birth mother who changed her mind. Emily, initially horrified, had succumbed to the clinic's pressure and the allure of having her secret baby without the pain of pregnancy, and the financial incentive. She had rationalized it, telling herself I would have a healthy baby and she would get hers in the end. It was a monstrous plan, facilitated by a desperate, unethical clinic and a sister, blinded by self-interest. The main conflict, the true parentage of Leo and the reason for the DNA anomaly, was resolved, but the resolution brought with it an unbearable new burden of grief and betrayal. Mark held me as I sobbed, the beautiful little boy sleeping soundly in the next room, a product of lies and deceit. My baby, the one I had carried, nurtured, and loved with every fiber of my being, was not mine in the way I understood. He was my nephew. My heart ached with a pain far deeper than any fertility struggle. Looking back, it's been a long, excruciating road, filled with legal battles, therapy sessions, and a profound reevaluation of everything I thought I knew. The clinic faced massive lawsuits and eventually shut down. Emily and I are no longer sisters in the way we once were. The trust is shattered, perhaps beyond repair. David, blindsided by his wife's deception and the clinic's involvement, was as much a victim as I was. He now shares custody of Leo with Emily, who has struggled immensely with the consequences of her choices. Leo is now 3 years old. He is a bright, happy, and incredibly loved little boy. He knows 2 sets of parents, Mommy Sarah and Daddy Mark, and Mommy Emily and Daddy David. It's complicated, messy, and far from the traditional family I had envisioned, but he is thriving, surrounded by love, albeit a love born from a painful truth. The core lesson I learned from this agonizing experience is that true strength isn't about avoiding pain, but about finding a way to rebuild amidst the ruins. I had always believed in the clear, defined lines of family, but life, as I discovered, is far messier and more unpredictable. My transformation has been profound. I am no longer the naive, trusting woman who believed in a perfect, predictable world. I am stronger, more resilient, and fiercely protective of the love I choose to cultivate. I've learned that family isn't just about shared DNA. It's about shared love, commitment, and the unwavering choice to show up for each other, even when the foundations are shaken. I still long for a child of my own in the biological sense, and Mark and I are exploring adoption. But my love for Leo remains boundless. He is my heart, my joy, and a living testament to my capacity to love unconditionally, regardless of how he came into my life. He is a symbol of both immense pain and incredible resilience. And sometimes, in his innocent gaze, I see a reflection of the love that survived the ultimate betrayal. It makes me wonder, have you ever experienced a betrayal that completely reshaped your understanding of family or love? How did you find your way through it? I know these are deep questions, but I truly believe in the power of sharing our stories. The comment section below is a safe space for us to connect and support one another, so please share your thoughts if you feel comfortable. If this story resonated with you, giving this video a like would mean so much to me. And to make sure you don't miss our next story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you so much for listening.